Today I'm going to attempt to draw this horse using charcoal from this book about Toulouse-Lautrec. So he's one of my biggest influences and one of my favourite artists because I love his use of line, the way he draws. I like drawing and I like using a lot of line in my own work, so he's a big influence on me. And we're very familiar with him drawing pictures of people, but he did do horses as well, and this is one of my favourite images because we've got that movement of the horse and the perspective. So if we look here at the size of the horse's head compared to the back, we've really got him running off. You know, so it's sort of exaggerated that we're right here next to his back end and he's going off at a speed. So, you know, look at that, the way that we've got this triangle shape here giving us that perspective, and he's zooming off. Okay, so I'm going to have a go at this. The original was done in oil and watercolour and lithograph. So lithograph drawing with oil and watercolour. I'm going to try this using charcoal and watercolour. It's a combination I do quite like. Obviously you pick up bits of charcoal with your brush with the watercolours, but I quite like that. You get lots of different tones and makes it quite interesting. So before we do that, we'll just have a quick flick through this book. So this is one I've had for some time, and we can see he gets a lot of movement. So we've got the movement with the horse, but we also get a lot of movement with his dancers. So it's a combination of that movement that he gets and the line of his drawing and the mark making that I really like. Quite a strange little fella. If you read about his life story, there was one in particular I'm just flicking through to find that I looked at earlier that really made me think about that movement, and it was just a very simple drawing. So here we have this images. This was for posters, so he did a lot of posters and this kind of work of the dancing lady there. So here it is, the one I was looking for, and it looks a very simple image. This chap in his top hat just walking along, but we've got the posture there. He's looking very downcast, he's got his head down, he's got his shoulders forward, but we've also got this feeling of motion, that he is coming this way. He's slowly making his way forward even though he's very downcast. So we've got that movement in there and that life in there with one very simple portrait of this gentleman here. And if you look in the background, there's very scant detail in the people behind. It's all about him. And like I say, he looks very sad, very downcast, but he's got that movement coming forward. So we can learn a lot by looking at the work of other people. And look at the lines here. Again, the lines on the floor are going in the direction that this gentleman's going to be walking off into. So again, if we go back to the horse and look at the lines there. So it's the energy, really. I think energy is a good word for what he gets. He gets the energy of the horse and of the people moving. There's a lot of energy in here. This was done really quickly. Look at the mark making here. I'll do a zoom in of this, but if you just look at the splats of paint there, look how he's filled in the paint here. It's all very energetic. He's done this quite quickly, I would say. Worked very quickly and got these lines in and this movement. Look how simply some of this is done with that energy and urgency that he's got in there. Okay, so I'll stop wittering now and get on with this. So I'm going to probably concentrate a little bit more on the horse than the man himself. He's quite a simple shape. So just got, you know, if we look at the curve here, we're going all the way down. And again, it's about that posture of the jockey. So the jockey's posture, leaning forward, getting that momentum going. So very simple lines right down to his boot. We can hardly see his boot here, but we've got the shape of the underneath of his foot there. So he does know how to draw. He's got that really good sense of draftsmanship. And it's accurate in his posture and everything else. So I'll start with this now, just with some charcoal on a mixed media paper. I use ordinary willow charcoal for my drawing, and what I tend to do is snap little bits off so that you get a sharper edge for drawing with. So quite often you'll get a little corner that you can draw with, and as you use them and they become more blunt, you might want to snap another little bit off. So we need to leave space to fit all this in, so it's just an ordinary A4 mixed media pad, the one that I use quite often. And we need to be careful that we leave enough room for the head. So we'll just mark where we think his head's going to come to, just triangle shape really. And then we're going right down here with his body. So this line is, we're going from the saddle. So imagine the saddle's here And you can see all those lines he's made, and his belly goes around and his hips go around, so you're seeing his hip bone here. So think about the anatomy of the horse. Now I'm just setting off and drawing it. You may want to do measurements, but actually I think you'll learn a lot more if you don't do any measurements. His tail's going off a little bit, and going off the edge of the paper as he did himself here with the tail and this foot down here, it means that it gives you that sense of urgency and movement as well. So that's a good tip to copy from him, is that you get some sense of urgency by cutting the subject off on the corner of your paper there. I'm getting a bit fiddly there, we'll come back and do that in a minute. We'll want to just get the main kind of shapes in here. So look at the anatomy. This is where his tail is attached, and it also attaches to his thigh there. If you call it a thigh, you probably don't. So he's very aware of the anatomy of the horse. I can tell that the way he's got these lines going in this direction here. Yeah, everything about this, the way he's got these lines here, I can tell that he understands the muscle underneath and what's going on here. So as you're going along, like I said, if you do it freehand, you're learning so much more as you go along. And with charcoal, you know, you can just rub it out if it's in the wrong place, it doesn't matter. It's an exercise in learning what they were thinking and understanding the anatomy of this horse. It's very different to us. They've kind of got two knees, if that makes sense. And here, where it dips in, it's just indicating where the muscle is there. And that really sweet. That's a very important line. This one here, getting that down there. I think we need this slightly fatter here. So you can see how drawing with charcoal makes it really easy for you to correct things and get things more accurately. And start and put in some of his details of the tone. There's a lot of tone under here, obviously under his tail. You can see it's a he. He's not getting much light there. So we're going along, and we've got all these lovely lines that he's got here going up. So look at the distance between here and here. It's not much at all, because of that foreshortening and perspective that we've got going on. I made his legs a bit fat there. So look at this foot in line with this one. So it wants to be about here somewhere. So if you have an imaginary line there, and look at the direction of that shape of his foot, and you can see how Lautrec has put these little circles in little ovals to he's thinking it through himself. He knows the anatomy of the horse there and knows where that should be. And we have just got this foot hanging down here, which always looks a bit silly, doesn't it? You feel like you know, making it look a bit daft putting that there, but he's done that very lightly. He's only got very light indication of that there. I feel like I've got his tummy not low down enough. So like I said, we've got the saddle here. That's a very, very slight indication of the saddle, and then his back's dipping in, and obviously the jockey isn't actually connected to the saddle at that point. And again, he's going to be going off the paper, so like I said before, we're not going to worry too much about him. Just get his pants and his foot in the right place. So his foot's here. His pants come around here, and then his shirt is going off there somewhere. So you've got that little dip here. I think I've made him too high up maybe. So again, he's not just understanding the anatomy of the horse, he's understanding the anatomy of the chap on top as well. You can see where the line of his thigh and his muscle are there, and that way his clothes are going around those. So here, his neck, this is a huge muscle here on a horse. You've got that massive neck. So you need to think about getting that right. His ears are going back, he's got that attention. His eye socket here, that we're obviously aware of. His cheek and his open mouth, obviously. I'm not overly happy about the shape of this. So if we look at that negative space here where his arm's coming down, and it's very sketchy. We've not got a proper hand there. Although it's not. So although the hand, if we look at it, there's lots of squiggly lines there, a lot going on. It is still very accurate because you can still get the feeling of the thumb here and of the fingers here. So they're going around that rein, and you've got the rein very lightly put in there. So I think I've got my jockey too big and too fat. So let's slim him down a little bit. Get some of this out of here. So if we look across from the top of his pants, it's slightly higher than his ears. Going down, and then we've got his knee here, which is pretty obvious, and then his boot. So we've got his pants going too far down basically. We should have boot and this leg here is a little bit more attached to the horse at this point here. So not great, but it's slightly better than it was, I think. Get his shirt going out there, and it's sort of ruched up a little bit, isn't it? And his arm. Like I said, we're not worrying too much. I know he's headless horseman. Okay, so now it's time to kind of take a step back from this and have a look. And I can see, I think I've got his head too big, because if you remember right at the start, I said, you know, his head's much smaller because it's a lot further away, and we've got this exaggerated perspective and foreshortening going on. So his head needs to be smaller than I've got it. The ear's a little bit further back, but we're not going to, it doesn't really matter about that, does it? We've got, look at the shape of the muscles, it goes around. So at this stage we can start and put these lines going in the right direction and, you know, refine them a little bit. Rub that out where it's too fat. So I'll carry on a little bit now with this without wittering on at you. I'll put some of these tones in and some of these more exaggerated lines that he's got, and then we'll come back and put some colour on it. As I was doing that and looking back at what he'd done and then looking at mine and thinking, no, that's wrong, I've not got him fat, the horse isn't fat enough actually, I don't think, and I haven't got this line quite right. And I was looking back and correcting and looking again, and I thought that's exactly what he's been doing with the anatomy of the horse. If you look at his lines, you can see where he's done a line and then altered it and gone over again, and he thought, yes, this line's right, so I'm going to really scribble and get more there, get that energy and that movement. And again, as I just said before, he really understands the anatomy of the horse. The way he's squiggled the underside of the foot that you can see as he's running along. The lines of his cheek, he understands that there's that big muscle here, the way the lines are going around here. Like I said, this is a huge muscle and he's put those lines going around it. He's got that energy, he's got that vigour. I love it. You can probably tell that from the way I'm talking. So this isn't great compared to this, but it's a great exercise because it really makes you think and look, and understanding what they're doing can help your own work. When you're working in charcoal and you're going to put some watercolour on just to give it that little bit of colour, I'll just give it a blow first, get rid of any loose little bits of charcoal that you might have, and then we'll come on with some colour. But if you look at his colour, there's so much in here. Even though it's very lightly put on, we've got some pink in here, there's lots of yellows, there's this lovely sienna colours, which is a great colour for a horse. So we'll just put a mix of colours on, but nothing too much. And then he's just gone round with the grass. So you wouldn't, if you were doing a field, normally you would be putting a wash on maybe this way if you were doing it in watercolour. And if we look at how he's done it here, it's just great the way he's just been so not worried, not concerned about just giving us that indication, not worried about the accuracy, he's just worried about getting that movement and that sense of the horse running past you and the feeling of that sound when he's galloping past you. So I'll get my watercolours out now. Okay, I'm in danger of overdoing it. I've lost a lot of these lines, and you could go back on top and put the lines in. Obviously he's got much finer lines than I have. There's lots and lots of lines, so if you wanted you could have a go at this in pencil. You could use a charcoal pencil as well, or you could have a go in pen. But whatever you're using, try and work really quickly, because the more you get into this and the more you look at it, the more you realise how quickly he's done it. He's really rushed at this, and look at that movement in the ground there where he's raised his foot from the ground here and there's that splatter there. So do it quickly if you want to have a go at this. Try not to do any measuring, just try to have a go, and if it goes wrong it doesn't matter, have another go if you want to, but just learn something from it, just have a play with it. I think it's a lovely image. This isn't great, but I've learned something and I've understood a little bit more about what he was doing and his work. Okay, so when it's dried we could go back on top of it with some charcoal and get some more lines and make it a little bit more accurate if we wanted to. And again, just look at all those colours that he's used, lots and lots of colour there. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that. I'll be back again soon with another tutorial or demonstration. In the meantime, have a lot of fun with your own drawing and have a great weekend. Bye bye for now.